Thanks for being here at the Sheldon Jackson Museum. We're here with Liz Morrow. This is her last event for part of her Alaska Native Artist Residency program, Residency. Been really thrilled to have her here, and this is just a nice summary of what she's done since she's been here in Sitka and what she's experienced here at the museum. Our next artist, who will be arriving on the 15th and starting her work on the 16th, is Shirley Hooch, and she is a baleen, walrus, ivory, and wood worker. She makes beautiful jewelry using all those materials and more. And she'll begin on Wednesday, the 16th. And I'd like to thank the Friends of Sheldon Jackson Museum for supporting this residency program, as well as the Maxwell Hanrahan Foundation. And also to start just with a land acknowledgement before we begin and turn it over to Liz. We would like to acknowledge and express our appreciation to the Indigenous people of Tlingit-Ani, who have occupied this land for longer than any of us can imagine, and after 250 years of colonization in Alaska, are graciously allowing us to share this land. Thank you so much, Liz.
Next slide. There we go. Thank you guys for being here. Liz Morrow, Chikayaasix Morrow, Asachtakuk, Unangax, Ankarichum Tanadagusi Ilahan Angichtakuk, Tacoma Tanadagusi Ilan Angharizak. So my name is Liz Chikayaasix Morrow. I am Unangax. I am from Anchorage, Alaska, and I currently live in Tacoma, Washington. I have been here at Sheldon Jackson since the 16th of June, and as a part of my residency, I have been able to see the collection here at the museum. In addition to everything that's out in the museum kind of showroom out there, I've been able to go into the back collection and see some items back there. So I wanted to share some of the pieces that really stood out to me and that were really inspirational for me. So these pieces right here are actually out in the museum, so you can see them in the museum. These are baskets woven by Unangan people. These are the grass woven baskets, which are widely considered to be the finest basket weaving in the world. Some of these pieces have up to 2,000 little weavings per square inch. So they're extremely fine pieces. I really loved the vibrancy of these colors that they were able to achieve in these baskets. One of my favorite colors is in here, the chartreuse on that little belt there on the left side. But I really just love how bold and graphic these are and the pattern work. And they also felt really similar to a basket that my great-great-grandma wove, kind of those similar triangle motifs she had on her woven piece as well. So these two pieces really stuck with me. And then in the back, there were just tons and tons of examples of these etched ivory little figurines, and they're only about this big. So they're super tiny, and the detail work is just stunning. You have the little seals there, and they have their little dots on them, and then the birds with their feathers. I don't have a photo of it here, but on some of the birds, if you flip them over to their back, they have on their little bellies little duck feet, and it's just the attention to detail is just really stunning, and I really love these little guys. This piece, there's a couple of these in the museum, some of the smaller models, and this was just really fun for me to see because my grandpa carved this one for me and pieced this guy together. And so it was really fun to see something in the museum that just was nearly identical to a piece that I have at my house. And then these are all fishing implements, and we have hooks, we have floats, we have weights. What I really loved about this, and I think I was talking today on Instagram, sharing something about it, was there's a sort of distinction between fine art and craft in the art world today, and how that isn't really present in Indigenous cultures. And I think this idea that art that was made for functional pieces is somehow lesser than, quilting, fiber work, all that kind of stuff is craft. It's not fine art. But just the way that all of these pieces were, functional pieces. It's just a fishing float or fishing weight or a fishing lure, but they're all like, it doesn't need to be a fish, but it's just beautiful to make something that you're going to work with every day into something really lovely, and to channel the artistic urge that we as humanity have into these just everyday pieces. Like these, I love these little like seals, the little seal weights. They even have their little whiskers, all this little like little details. And it's like, I think we're so used to now all of our kind of day-to-day objects just being utilitarian and stainless steel or whatever, but like just thinking about everyday objects as being vessels for creative and artistic expression. I was really struck by that. And I want to share some of the pieces that I made while I was here. This photo that I took I took it on one of the very first days that I was here. I was out on the beach, out in front of the house where I was staying, and this kelp circle was just laying on the beach there in the low tide. And it reminded me of like the lore of mushroom circles and fairy circles. And I just imagined that it was like a fairy circle, but for sea folk or sea fairies or something. And so I had brought this wood panel up. It's just a wood painting panel, so it's kind of like a canvas. And I had bought this at the art store before coming here, and I had seen it, and I was just like, I'll buy that and I'll bring it, and maybe I'll like find some inspiration, because I don't typically paint things too frequently. I mostly do printmaking. And so I was like, well, I'll bring it. We'll see what happens with it. And I had drawn this sketch in my notebook there of the kelp circle that I had seen. And so what I ended up doing was I painted the panel black and then carved into it with the same carving tools I used to carve my linoleum. And so the little carved pieces really have the same texture that this kelp just has this really beautiful undulating texture on the fronds or leaves. And so I was able to get that texture into this piece, and all of those little kelp leaves. So that was a really fun project that I had not anticipated that I was going to do until I got here, and inspiration struck. And the other thing that really, I think, made me think of doing this was that I had, in the process of studying things for my first artist talk that I gave here, I was looking at artist John Hoover's work, and he did a lot of these carved panels. So they're also carved. You can kind of see the texture next to the loons there. And so part of them are not carved, and then part of them are carved. So it's a very shallow relief carving. But I really loved how graphic they were and kind of similar to the process of my printmaking. Here's another one of his pieces. That same, you can see that carved relief that he has done, and then with the painting on top. And so this is a little imaginary goose that I made. This was for a local Tacoma public art piece that's going to be collaborative with a lot of other artists making bird designs, and then there's going to be a big tree and all the different birds are going to be in it. So this was my contribution to that project. And so I drew this spirit goose up here, and it was kind of also inspired by John Hoover's work and just this sort of idea of creating creatures that maybe don't exist. And you kind of see that in some of the pieces in the museum here. You'll see some like depictions of animals and you're like, what is that? Like, I don't like remember seeing that animal anywhere. And so there's these sort of like fantastical creatures sometimes. And so this is not a goose that exists anywhere except in my mind. But I liked him, and he feels very whimsical and loon-like, and so that was also kind of a fun project that was not really didn't come into being until I came here. Another thing that I did, and I wish I could have it here, but I am clear coding it right now. So I made a buoy for the Braveheart Volunteers auction that's happening in September. So a bunch of artists, local artists, paint these buoys, and then they get auctioned off to support the organization. So I was able to get a buoy, and I painted some sea creatures and sea life on one side, and then on the other side some land animals and birds, and we've got a little otter and a baby otter. So that was a really fun project to be able to be a part of and do something that gives back to the community here in Sitka. So hopefully, potentially that will be hanging up downtown. I don't know what they'll do with it once I give it to them until September.
I'll be hanging out.
Oh yeah. Yay, that'll be fun. Okay, cool. And so the big project that I did while I was here was the steamroller print, which you can see the full print over in the corner there. And so I carved this big linoleum. So this big linoleum I carved that first week that I was here. And this was a design that had come into my mind in a dream. I had a dream where I had swam all the way to Sitka from Tacoma. And then when I got here, I was walking around town and a tsunami came and swept me out into the Sound. And I was under the water and it was very murky and silty and I couldn't see anything. I couldn't tell up from down, and I knew that I was like drowning and dying and I was alone. And like had one of those like wake up moments where you're like, that was like way too way too real. And as I was reflecting on the dream later, I was thinking about how it felt a little bit like a metaphor to the whole process of coming to the residency and like thinking about swimming all the way from Tacoma to Sitka being the process of creating the artwork, applying to the residency, doing all that work to get here. And then the tsunami sort of felt like the imposter syndrome that sort of like takes you out and you're like, I shouldn't, I don't deserve to be here. I don't belong here. This is too, and I was also thinking about this idea of like, I'm under the water, I'm swirling around, I can't tell up from down. And I felt alone because I couldn't see anything under the water because it's so hazy. But in reality, I wasn't alone at all underwater. I had all of these relatives around me. I had the kelp growing from the bottom of the ocean toward the top, showing me where the top of the ocean was to swim to. I had seals and I had fish all around me. So even though it felt like I was alone underwater, the reality was I wasn't alone underwater and I was surrounded by sea kin. So that the title of this piece is Sea Kin. And we printed this one with a steamroller in my parents' garage. So that was a really fun project to be able to do like a community event and invite the community out to see the printing. We do steamroller printing in Tacoma. There's an event every year that we do, and everybody loves it and the kids love it. And it's just a really fun way to do printmaking as like a community event. And so I really wanted to do it in Tacoma or in Sitka. And so I was really excited when that project was something that was agreed upon that we could do up here. And so we did that last Saturday, and you can see I'm inking up the linoleum there, and then the steamroller just rolling over, and then we peel it up off the ground. And we got 9 prints. And so those are available through the Friends of Sheldon Jackson. So they're being sold for a donation to the Friends of Sheldon Jackson, and it will help support the artist residency program here so that it can continue bringing more amazing Alaska Native artists here to be able to be a part of the residency program and making art and doing great things. And then another really cool thing that I was able to do while I was here was teach a linoleum relief carving printmaking class. So we had all these guys come, and they had a little like 5x7 block of linoleum. And we did the whole process from transferring the design to the linoleum, carving it. Some people did their own designs. You can see there on the 2 ends, those guys came with their own designs. And then we had some of my designs that people either printed kind of just as they were, or they put different things in them. One lady put like a really beautiful nature scene inside the Raven. And so it was really cool to see how, even if they worked off of one of my original designs, how unique and different it looked just from the process of them carving it, and how they worked with the material to be able to transfer the design and carve the design. I mean, they all looked totally different from one another, even though some of them were based on the exact same design. So that was super, super fun. We also did, I didn't get any photos of it, but yesterday we did a class with the 4-H kids here, and we did a little printmaking activity with them. And we also had the high school printmaking class from the Fine Arts Camp come over yesterday. And so I got to talk to all of them and answer some of their questions. And it's always fun to indoctrinate the kids into the printmaking cult really early on. I didn't learn about printmaking until college, so anytime I can share the love of printmaking with the youngsters, can get them in early. So yeah, I mean, it's been a really wonderful experience. I feel like I have, prior to coming here, the past year, sort of all of 2024 was really a process of returning to my art practice and just sitting down to just make any art that came to my mind, even if it was silly, even if it was unserious, and just to get my mind and my body in the art making practice, and not putting pressure on myself to make something important or deep or meaningful or any of that stuff. And I feel like in the past like 6 months or so, I've started feeling like I know a little bit more what my artwork looks like and what my style is and what my subject matter is. And I think that's like been even more galvanized during my time here. These 2 pieces here, actually all 3, the gold kelp and the raven and the salmon, those were all pieces that I created last year. I was here in Sitka. My son goes to the elementary fine arts camp. So he came, and I decided I was going to make my own mini art residency while he was at camp. And so during that time, I drew these guys, and that was really sort of the seed for kind of this style and subject matter that I'm working with now. And so it's kind of been sort of this full circle moment of coming back here, doing like a quote unquote real artist residency, and being here for a longer period of time and being immersed in, Alaska and a lot of the things that even though the Pacific Northwest is close to Alaska, there's a lot of resources that aren't available, especially Alaska Native stuff. I was able to check out some books from the Sitka library where one of them was a book of Alaska or Aleut Native stories and narratives. And so just reading those has been sort of a jumping off point for some conceptualizing some new pieces and based on those stories. And yeah, so I think it's been really transformative, and I'm looking forward to the past couple of days. I'm like, I'm not going to start anything new big. I've sort of made all my things, but I'm like sketching ideas for new pieces that I'll be creating, and even feeling inspired to work on things that aren't printmaking necessarily, doing more stuff like this carved panel and doing other things that aren't directly the medium that I have been focused on for the past year. So that's been very cool. I'm excited to go home and keep making artwork. So I'll just open up for some questions if anybody has anything that they want to ask.
When you're in Tacoma, working on your stuff, you have a studio at home,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have places in Tacoma where you sell your stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a pretty good thriving art market scene in Tacoma. So there's a lot of small art markets or vending opportunities for creative makers or crafts people to be able to sell their handmade stuff. So yeah, I try to do at least one market a month, especially during the summertime when people are out and about and going to the outdoor markets and stuff. So yeah, I do those. And then I also have an online shop. So for anybody who is not in Tacoma and sees something that they like, it'll probably be on my online shop. Yeah.
Are you working on your stuff while you're at the market?
No, it's a lot of just like talking to people. So ideally, I wouldn't have any time to make anything because I'd be chatting up all the folks. But there are some slow markets, but not typically. They're typically pretty busy and people filtering past and chatting the whole time. So yeah.
Did you print things for little kids?
At some of the markets, yes, they'll like a recent one, they wanted us to have an activity at our table in addition to our little market booth. So I made, well, you actually have the little ravens, so little bookmarks, so the little kids or really anyone, grown-ups too, can ink up the linoleum, and then I'll put it in the press, and then they'll squish it in the press. And so yes, I do have some markets require that you have a activity, but it's usually like the ones that are like at the library or something where they kind of have a requirement that you have yes. So those are the little raven bookmarks that we do as an activity. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I forgot to mention that we went over to the Pioneer Home, and yeah, we had folks there roll the ink on, and yes, this is a Jude original. You should sign it. You can sign it next to mine.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Thanks for your presentation. I know you talked a little bit here and also with me, in the museum setting about how you had a little bit of imposter syndrome. You know, when you were getting ready to come here, you were nervous, you had this dream, a little bit of anxiety. There are so many Indigenous artists that are part of this diaspora that's outside of Alaska. People who are from Alaska and then they move. They go to college, they get jobs, what have you. People who are younger than you, maybe less experienced with artwork, who are questioning, should they do it? What's the next step for them? Do you have any advice for them after being here in residence, and has being in residence shifted any of those thoughts for you or those feelings for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it can be hard to be outside of Alaska and away from any sort of like cultural activities. And I mean, last summer I went to the Pacific Northwest Aleut Council's culture camp, which was the first time I had been to anything out of Alaska that was like any sort of cultural thing. So it was kind of a nice reminder that there are people, and even though, you know, even everybody at that culture camp is coming from, you know, kind of all over the Pacific Northwest, there's plenty of people outside of Alaska, kind of, you know, and there's a lot of people who, it's not just my generation, like a lot, like we were talking about John Hoover, you know, he was from Alaska, grew up here, but then he moved to Washington State and spent most of his life in Washington State. So there's a kind of just getting that sense of like, I think you can feel really isolated and alone, you know, when you're just a Native person living in Tacoma, where, you know, not in community with anybody else necessarily, but knowing that it's not like your exclusive experience and that there's other people that are around and you might not have direct contact with them, but I think that has made me feel less alone and kind of more confident in creating things in connection to ancestry. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a hard process, but even just being here and kind of coming to Sitka every year is kind of like a touchstone for me in order, you know, every year I get to come back for my son going to fine arts camp. So it is kind of this nice thing where it's like, okay, well, I know that I'll get to go back for this thing. But yeah, I get back, get my feet back in the soil, so to speak.
I think like seeing the museum pieces that, you know, resonated with you, like the sled that your grandfather made, it's like,
Mhm.
oh, it's in the museum, you know, or
Yeah.
the baskets that your great grandma
Yeah.
made. It's such a great reminder for you too, like, yeah.
Yeah, because like those stuff, it's just in my house.
Right.
I don't think of it as
Yeah.
like, it's super important to me, but I don't,
Right,
Yeah, it's just-
stuff you saw
it's just like-
growing up.
yeah.
In a shell,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. It's so
Yeah, it's like special to me because it's my grandpa's, but it's also like, oh, this is like
heritage.
yeah, it's part of that, so.
Those dog sleds that your grandpa were made. He just made them because you remember the design of all the dog sleds he made.
Yeah.
Because he actually used them.
Mhm. Yeah.
My next question is kind of related to that. So when you were growing up in Anchorage, the
Mhm.
big city, how, and you guys are too to help answer, how much were you tuned into your cultural heritage?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think very much, but I also think in the 90s, I think that sort of cultural revitalization was still starting to happen. Like nowadays, I see, you know, all the culture camps happening and, you know, there's a lot of really cool events happening like at Alaska Native Heritage Center, but I don't think that I was really aware of that kind of stuff. I fished in Bristol Bay for a couple summers, which was something that I really wanted to do to be able to connect to that part of like my grandpa and my uncle and everybody, they fished in Bristol Bay. So that was like something that I really wanted to do to go out there and to be a part of that part of our history. My grandpa was fished at Bristol Bay in the double ender open sailboats, and he was one of the last alive who had from that generation who had done that. So that felt like an important thing to do. And I'm really glad that I was able to do that. I didn't fish with my grandpa. He was very old by then. I went out and fished with my uncle out in Bristol Bay. So yeah, I mean, I only got to do it a couple years, but even that really felt like being out where my grandpa grew up and where he was running dog sleds through the wilderness at like 12 years old, running trap lines and like, so yeah.
Oh, and I was just gonna ask what Pacific culture.
It was up in Snohomish.
Oh.
Yeah, kind of up north of Seattle a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Do we have any questions from the Zoom folks
Mm,
or comments?
let's see, we got chat. Do. I don't see any. Nope.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you guys since you're here. So when Liz was little, did you see a booming artist in there?
Oh, yeah.
What kinds of things?
I mean, just little drawings when she's like 2.
Oh my
What
gosh.
is she doing? Or, yeah, she was quite accomplished as a little kid in high school, sure.
Oh, it's cool.
Mhm.
Oil paintings or acrylic, I don't remember which.
I don't think I did oil.
No, she
No, it was all acrylic.
kind of ink and stuff like that. You're very always meticulous. So this kind of work, like she would do pen and ink, like pointillism.
Mm-hmm.
It looked just like the photograph, but yeah, she's very tedious nature of this.
Yeah.
Really fits you so well. And this style fits you really.
Do you have any pictures you can pull up of your large format?
Oh, my other steamrollers? Not, not on this computer. I think something that has been really interesting of this process and what you were saying was reminded me of like that, like growing up, I did a lot of like photorealism, like graphite drawings, pencil drawings, based on photos and really like replicating exactly these photos. And I think that like for a long time, I felt like in order for it to be good, it needed to, because I knew I could do realism. And so it had to like look exactly like the thing. And it had to be, photorealistic in a way for it to be considered good. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I think what's been really interesting as a part of this process has been like studying a lot of the different artists that I studied for my artist talk, seeing a lot of the other indigenous printmakers and artists has sort of disengaged those things for me, like because I'm like, I love this work. And it's like not like nothing about it is photorealistic. Like it's beautiful and it has this like motion to it and the use of color and the, composition is stunning, but it's not like you wouldn't say that this is like
More expressions.
yeah, and it's and I'm definitely not like an abstract artist. I really like representational art, but I think that I have sort of finally been able to separate from, and it might even just be that like external praise of someone being really impressed that you can render something really realistically. Because like, none of this is realistic necessarily, but it has more feeling in it to me than the realism work that I was doing previously. Yeah, and I think too that like I was saying, like last year I was just making whatever because I just wanted to like follow my curiosity and let whatever silly thing come to my mind be made and not worry about like it being important or based on anything or have any meaning to it necessarily. But I think I have also found sort of through that process of like disengaging from that need to get the validation of like, wow, this is really impressive. Like, I guess I have been able to stop feeling the need for that validation or like the need for something to be like impressive in a specific way. And that's kind of freed me up to make work that feels more authentic to me. And like, I didn't do a lot of fine art making between like graduating art school and then like a couple years ago. So the past couple years have been a process of like, okay, well, I made art in my 20s and then did creative stuff, but it wasn't like making art. So like, what is my art? And what do I make now in my 30s? And who I am now as like a parent and a person who has lived many more years than when you're right out of college. And so that's been kind of an interesting evolution of like letting go of needing to make something important, and through that process, making silly things and cute things and whatever, but throughout that whole process, also coming into an art practice and an art making that feels like I can get the like sort of taste of like, oh, this feels like my art finally. Like this is my work now, instead of just like, what should I make? I don't know. That's kind of cool. Maybe I'll like do that, you know?
I loved how when you did that last year, you just, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you're just hanging out during fine arts camp.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yes.
Yeah.
I could see like the total evolution, and it's like, it's graphic, it's detailed, but it has that native art feel to it. and It's modern, I don't know. It's like, I see that.
You've seen her evolve.
Mhm.
Evolution of your art is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been really fun. I've been sitting here the past couple days, like sketching like some new ideas for like work that I want to do when I get home. And I have like a couple little sketches. So these are little designs, and you can see like that raven and that sort of squishy design going on. And these are based on a story from that book that I was telling you about, the narratives and stories. And they were recorded on the islands in the early 1900s. So like 1909, a guy had gone out there and had the Unangax people tell stories in their native tongue, and then in the 80s had it made into a book. So on one page is the Unangam Tanu, just the actual what the people had said, and then there's on the other side is the translation into English. So you get both of those, and then you get these stories that are, these ancestral tales from, the islands where my ancestors lived, and potentially even actual ancestors, like the names of some of the people who gave these, orations are like, oh, that's our family name. And it's on Attu, and there's probably not a Prokopiev's on Attu in 1909, so that's been kind of cool. And then I was working on these are some I wanted to, inspired by those John Hoover pieces, some like little folding panel pieces. He did these really cool like wooden panels that opened and closed. So I'm thinking of playing around with doing something like that, and combining carving and woodworking, which I am also have done a lot of woodworking and carpentry. So kind of melding all of these like little threads of skills that I've acquired and things that I've done, and kind of them all sort of congealing into this artwork. Yeah.
So fun. It's like
Yeah, super fun.
the evolving artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so did you say are you taking those stories and those legends and creating pictures?
Yeah. So that's just from one of the stories. And I was, drawn to it because it was about Raven, and I love Raven. And so yeah, there was just some little like scenes in those tales that I was like, ooh, like I can picture that scene in this like printed. So I'm excited to get back and kind of refine the designs and carve some new linoleum and get some new prints made. Yeah.
I hope I heard you say that you come back to Sitka every year, correct?
I mean, as long as my son wants to come to fine arts camp, or I might make him come anyways. But yeah, he's in the elementary camp. He does have a lot of years. I can force him to come for through high school. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So he's in third grade. So he still has a couple years left of the elementary camp and then
So we can see you.
yeah.
Appreciate very much the art that you're doing right now, and I'm really excited to see what you do in the future too.
Thank you. Yeah.
You don't need my bell.
I mean, it has been actually, it's been really nice because I don't have like a large body of like this style of work. I mean, this is like the largest body of this style of work that I have had anywhere. And I didn't bring any of my other work because I kind of wanted it to feel cohesive and this feels like the direction that I want to go in. So I really only brought pieces that match this style. But it's been really lovely, even having external validation, having people come in here and just being like, wow, beautiful, beautiful work. Oh, this is just stunning. And so it's just been like, oh, people like it. Like, I like it, but like, it's cool that like people are coming in here, like who don't know me at all. And they're just like, wow, I love this. So that's been, it has been nice to, I guess, get that external validation as well of like, oh, like it feels nice when people say that they like the things that you make. So yeah.
So I'm assuming you have a website or?
I do. It's lizmorrowstudios.com. So
There's a lively art scene in Tacoma.
there is, it's a really wonderful artistic community and there's a big printmaking scene there. So that's also really cool to be able to, there's a big printmaking festival every year that is super fun. Yeah, and we just have a really great art community there. Every autumn we have a open studio tour in Tacoma. So artists all over the city open up their studios and invite in the public so you can kind of go around the map and pick out what artists you want to see or meet new ones and get to see them in their actual like creative space, their studio space. And that's another one where there's usually like an activity where people come and can make and take something. So yeah, just sharing the art and sharing your workspace. Yeah, and I've gotten into doing more public art in Tacoma, which has been really wonderful, doing murals, and I have a sculpture up, a temporary sculpture up in Tacoma right now, and I'll have another piece going up this year as well. So yeah, there seems to be a really nice emphasis on public art in Tacoma, and it seems to be well funded. So yeah, I heard that Sitka had at the most recent council meeting something about investing more in public art in Sitka, and I'm like, yes, do it.
Yeah, I think we should just meet and call up and out of that. Oregon. So
Oh, okay.
Oregon.
Yeah.
We'll come visit you and we'll come to the art.
Yes.
Well, if there are no more questions, thank you so much, Liz.
Yeah, thank you guys.
For everybody online, if you're local, her last day is coming up tomorrow, so please come visit. Or you'll have to run into her next time she's in Sitka.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. How do you say the town?
Chikayaasix. Chikayaasix.
Good.